Caleb Ward had lived most of his years under the wide Arizona sky, where the land stretched far beyond what the eye could see, and silence moved like a calm river across the desert. He was a quiet rancher, the kind who did his work without asking for much from life. His days were filled with mending fences, checking cattle, hauling water, and fixing anything that broke on the ranch. He rarely visited town except for supplies, and even when he did, he kept to himself. People respected him for his honest nature and steady hands. But they also wondered why a man would choose such a quiet life. Caleb never felt lonely, though. The land itself felt like a companion, and the open sky made him feel at peace. One afternoon, after selling a few cattle, Caleb stopped by the local trading post. A small auction was going on, with old tools, broken furniture, and odd items scattered around. He stood at the back, watching without much interest. But then the auctioneer pointed to a small, abandoned cabin, listed on a piece of paper. The cabin sat a few miles from Caleb's ranch, near the line where the desert began climbing toward a low ridge. The auctioneer called it an extra property with no value, and joked that even termites would avoid it. People laughed. Someone whispered that the roof had collapsed. Others claimed it was haunted. No one wanted it. The starting price was $1. No one raised a hand. The auctioneer lowered it to 50 cents. Again, no one moved. Finally, with a sigh, he announced 12 cents, just to get rid of it. Even then, the crowd hesitated. A man joked that buying it would be a waste of coins. Caleb, however, was thinking differently. He didn't care about living in the cabin. He simply needed scrap wood for repairs on the ranch, and even bad wood was better than none. So he raised his hand calmly, surprising everyone with his lack of hesitation. The auctioneer slammed the gavel and yelled, "Sold for 12 cents." The crowd chuckled, but Caleb simply nodded, paid the coins, and walked away without reacting to any of the whispers. For 2 days, Caleb thought nothing about the cabin. But on the third morning, after finishing chores early, he saddled his horse and rode toward it. The land around the cabin was quiet and untouched. As he approached, the building looked even worse than the rumors. The roof sagged like an old hat. The windows were blocked with wooden boards. A layer of dust covered the outside walls. Still, something strange caught his attention immediately. The door wasn't only shut, it was sealed with thick ropes wrapped across it in a careful, almost ceremonial pattern. The knots were neat, not random, and the ropes looked like they had been there for many years. Caleb climbed off his horse and walked closer. He placed a hand on the door and felt a faint warmth, as if someone had touched it not long ago, though he knew that couldn't be possible. The cabin had been abandoned for years. When he leaned closer, he noticed odd symbols drawn faintly on the wood. They looked like they were made with ash or old paint. Caleb didn't recognize them, but he knew enough about local Apache traditions to sense they were not random scribbles. They were meant to protect something or someone. A quiet unease grew in him, but he wasn't the type to walk away once he made a decision. He carefully cut the ropes with his pocket knife. The fibers snapped softly, almost too softly for how thick they were. When the last rope fell, he pushed the door open. Dust swirled inside like a gray cloud, making him cough. Light seeped through holes in the roof, creating thin beams that made the dust sparkle in the air. The smell of old wood, untouched for years, filled the small space. Caleb stepped inside, letting his eyes adjust to the dim light. The cabin was empty, except for a few broken chairs, an overturned table, and a blanket crumpled in a corner. He took a few steps forward, scanning the place. Then, his heart stopped. Hanging from the ceiling beams, suspended by long, strong ropes, was a human-shaped figure gently swaying in the still air. For a second, he couldn't move. His mind raced with questions, but fear didn't take over. Instead, a deep concern rose in him. He moved closer, and the shape became clear. It was a young Apache girl, taller than anyone he had ever seen. At first, he thought she might be grown, but her features and soft face showed she was still young, not yet fully grown into adulthood. Her head rested to one side, her long, dark hair falling around her shoulders. She wasn't tied in a painful way or trapped violently. Instead, she was held in a careful position, as if someone meant to protect her. Her arms were resting against her sides, and her breathing was slow and steady. She wasn't dead. She wasn't harmed. She was deeply asleep. Caleb felt a rush of confusion. Why would someone suspend a girl inside a cabin? Why leave her there? And why sell the place for only 12 cents? He stepped closer and noticed more symbols drawn on the beams around her. Some were faded, but others still held their shape. He didn't understand them, but they looked like they belonged to a ritual or an old tradition, maybe something meant to keep her safe. But safe from what? He reached out carefully, placing a hand near her arm without touching her at first. Her skin looked warm, not cold. She looked alive. Her breathing, though soft, was steady. Caleb whispered, "Can you hear me?" But there was no answer. Only silence. He took a deep breath. Leaving her here wasn't an option. He couldn't imagine how long she had been suspended like this. He didn't know her story, but he felt a sense of responsibility settle on him. He took out his knife again and studied the ropes. They didn't look like ordinary ropes. They were woven with care, almost like ceremonial braids. But if he didn't cut them, she would stay trapped here. And Caleb couldn't allow that. He moved slowly, cutting one rope at a time. As each rope loosened, her body shifted a little. Caleb made sure he was under her, to catch her weight. When the last rope was cut, she fell gently into his arms. She was heavier than an ordinary girl, her unusual height and strong build explained that. But he managed to hold her steady. He laid her on the dusty floor, brushing away debris so she wouldn't rest on anything rough. For a long moment, he simply watched her, unsure of what would happen next. Then, her eyelids fluttered slightly. Her breathing shifted. Caleb stepped back, not wanting to scare her. Slowly, she opened her eyes. They were warm, deep brown, and filled with confusion. She stared at him silently at first, her mind trying to understand where she was and who he was. Caleb lifted his hands gently and said, "It's okay. I'm not here to harm you." His voice was calm, steady, and soft. She blinked again, her gaze clearing just a little, as if waking from a dream that lasted too long. Her lips moved, but no words came. She looked around the cabin, then back at Caleb, trying to find meaning in the situation. She tried to sit up, but her strength failed her, and Caleb quickly moved to support her without touching her too much. "Easy," he said quietly. "You've been asleep for a long time, I think." The girl's breathing grew uneven, not from fear, but from weakness. Caleb brought his canteen to her and offered her a small sip. She hesitated, watching him carefully, then accepted. The water touched her lips, and she swallowed slowly, as if every movement required effort. After another moment, she finally spoke, her voice soft and rough. "Where is my family?" Caleb didn't know what to say. He didn't even know who she was, let alone what happened to the people who left her here. But he knew she needed help. She was alone, confused, weak, and far from understanding what happened during the years she slept suspended in ropes. Caleb made a choice right then. He couldn't leave her here. He couldn't walk away. Whatever her past was, whatever her story explained, she needed someone now. And Caleb Ward, the quiet rancher who never looked for anything unusual in life, realized that the cabin he bought for 12 cents had just become the beginning of something he never expected. Nayeli sat on the dusty wooden floor for a long moment, her breath slow and uneven as she tried to understand her surroundings. The dim light made her blink, and the old cabin creaked softly in the wind outside. Caleb stayed a few steps away, not wanting to crowd her. He didn't know what to expect. She looked frightened, but not dangerous. Her unusual height made her presence feel large in the small cabin. Yet she held herself with a kind gentleness that softened everything about her. She was scared, confused, and clearly trying to piece together a memory that felt lost. Caleb waited quietly until she finally looked at him again. Her eyes carried a mixture of fear and hope, like she wanted answers she wasn't ready to receive. Caleb gave a calm nod, trying to show she was safe. After a moment, she spoke again, her voice a little stronger this time. "Are you from the trading post?" Her words sounded unsure, as if she wasn't even certain what the trading post was anymore. Caleb shook his head and replied, "I'm a rancher. My name's Caleb Ward. I live not far from here." She swallowed hard, as if her throat was still dry even after water. She tried to push herself up, but her legs wobbled. Caleb quickly reached to help, and she allowed him to hold her arm lightly, accepting the help because she had no strength left to stand alone. When she finally got on her feet, her full height became clear. She stood much taller than Caleb, towering over him yet looking fragile, as if her long sleep had taken away the strength her body once had. She held onto the wall for balance, breathing slowly and focusing her gaze to keep from falling. Caleb backed up a little to give her space. "Take your time," he said softly. "You don't have to rush anything." She nodded slowly, then looked at the ropes on the ground. Her eyebrows tightened as she stared at them. "These ropes, they were supposed to protect me," she whispered. Caleb waited quietly as she tried to remember. "My elders, they placed me in sleep. There was sickness. A sickness that spread through our people. I was weak, and they feared I would not survive. They said this sleep would keep me safe until the danger passed." Her voice trembled as she continued. "They promised to wake me when it was safe, but nobody came." She looked around the cabin, her eyes filling with growing confusion. "Why am I here alone? Why didn't they return?" Caleb felt a heavy sadness rise inside him. He didn't know her past, but the truth was clear. Something had gone terribly wrong, and she had been forgotten. He didn't know if her people had been forced to leave or if something worse had happened, but he understood one thing: she had been suspended inside that cabin for years, maybe even longer. He stepped closer and spoke gently. "I don't know what happened, but you're safe now. You're not alone anymore." She looked at him, studying his face as if searching for deception. But Caleb's calm expression gave her comfort. She relaxed her shoulders slightly. "Safe," she repeated softly, as if she was trying to accept the idea. The air in the cabin felt heavy with memories she could not reach. Then her legs began to shake again, and she stumbled. Caleb reacted quickly, catching her before she fell. For a moment, she leaned against him, her tall form resting awkwardly but gratefully. Caleb gently guided her to sit on a cleaner part of the floor. "You've been asleep too long," he said quietly. "Your body needs time." She gave a small nod. "How long was I asleep?" Her voice carried a fear she tried to hide. Caleb hesitated. "I don't know exactly, but the cabin looked untouched for a long time." She closed her eyes, accepting a truth she wasn't ready for. When she opened them again, she seemed calmer. "Thank you for waking me," she said softly. Caleb gave a small smile. "I didn't ignore someone who needed help. Anyone would have done the same." But Nayeli shook her head. No, many would have run. You didn't." Her words carried a quiet sincerity that made Caleb feel a warmth he couldn't explain. After a few minutes, Caleb helped her stand again. She was weak, but determined. When they stepped outside, the sunlight made her squint. The open land seemed almost too bright after so long in darkness. She looked around slowly, taking in the desert, the distant ridge, and the endless horizon. A soft breeze brushed her hair, and she breathed deeply, as if tasting fresh air for the first time. Caleb walked beside her, letting her adjust. She touched the wooden frame of the cabin, running her fingers across the faded symbols. "These were drawn by my elders," she said quietly. "They protect those inside. They warned sickness away." Then she looked at the ropes inside. The sleep was meant to last days, maybe weeks. Not. She paused, her voice breaking slightly. Not this long. Caleb didn't press her further. He knew forcing memories wouldn't help. "You don't have to return inside," he said. "We should get you somewhere safe. My ranch isn't far." She looked at him, surprised. "Your home? Why?" Caleb shrugged lightly. "Because you can't stay here alone, and you're too weak to go anywhere by yourself." She looked down at her hands, studying them as if she could see the lost time written on her palms. "You are kind," she whispered. Caleb adjusted the saddle on his horse, then paused. "Can you ride?" She shook her head. "I've never been on a horse." Caleb nodded. "All right. Then we'll walk." Walking across the desert was slow. Nayeli stumbled several times, but Caleb stayed beside her, offering his arm when she needed support. She was embarrassed at first, but Caleb acted as if helping her was the most natural thing in the world. She asked simple questions along the way, trying to understand how much time had passed. "Do people still trade near the river?" she asked. Caleb hesitated. "There's still a trading post, yes, but the people have changed. Times have changed." She swallowed hard. "My people. Did you ever meet them?" Caleb shook his head. "I've seen Apache families, but not many, and not near this cabin. Not for years." Her eyes filled with quiet sadness, but she didn't cry. Instead, she asked softly, "What year is it?" Caleb told her. She stopped walking. For a moment, she didn't breathe. Her hands trembled slightly. Her voice was barely a whisper. "So many moons. So many seasons." Caleb stepped closer. "I'm sorry," he said gently. "I wish I had better answers." Nayeli closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "I am the last who remembers my old home," she murmured. The wind carried everything else away. As they continued walking, her steps grew steadier. She looked at the sky, the ground, the distant hills, trying to memorize everything about this changed world. Caleb noticed she was studying things with a mix of sadness and wonder. Every small thing, a flower, a bird, even the dust seemed important to her. Her curiosity made Caleb realize she had a gentle spirit, despite the heavy memories she carried. By the time they reached the ranch, the sun was lowering in the sky, painting everything in soft gold. Nayeli stopped at the fence line, staring at the wide land. She looked amazed by how open and peaceful it was. "This is yours?" she asked. Caleb nodded. "It's simple, but it's home." When he guided her toward the house, she hesitated at the doorway. The frame looked too small for her height. Caleb noticed immediately. "We'll figure it out," he said gently. She ducked slightly and stepped inside. The ceiling wasn't built for someone her size, but she managed. Caleb helped her sit at the table. She looked around quietly, studying every detail. Caleb brought her food, soft bread, cooked beans, and cool water. She ate slowly, carefully, as if unsure of modern tastes. But she was grateful, her eyes soft with relief. After eating, she leaned back, tired but calmer. "Your home feels safe," she said softly. Caleb smiled. "You can stay here until you're strong again. We'll figure out what to do after that." Nayeli looked at him for a long moment. her expression thoughtful. "I don't know why the spirits let you find me," she said in a quiet voice. "But I'm glad you did." The evening grew darker, and Caleb lit a small lamp. Nayeli watched the flame flicker, her eyes reflecting the warm glow. She looked peaceful for the first time since waking. Caleb realized that her presence didn't feel like a burden. Instead, it felt like something important had begun, something neither of them had expected. Inside that quiet ranch house, under a soft desert night, Nayeli slowly drifted into sleep. She rested peacefully, no longer suspended by ropes, no longer lost in forgotten time. Caleb sat nearby, watching over her to make sure she was safe. And in that simple, gentle moment, the bond between them began to grow, setting the path for everything that would come next. Morning light touched the ranch before Caleb even stepped outside. He was used to waking early, often before the sun rose. But this morning felt different. Something in the house made him more alert, more aware. For the first time in years, someone else was inside his home, someone who needed help, who needed guidance, and who came from a past he didn't understand. When he stepped quietly into the small room where Nayeli slept, he found her still resting, her breaths slow and steady. Her tall form almost didn't fit on the bed he had prepared. Yet she looked peaceful, lying on her side with one arm tucked under her head. Caleb watched for a moment, making sure she was comfortable, then stepped outside to begin his chores. He fed the horses, checked the cattle, and fixed the gate that had been loose for days. But every now and then, his thoughts returned to the girl inside his home. Her past was a mystery, her future uncertain, and her presence brought a kind of quiet wonder he could not explain. She seemed gentle, lost, and grateful all at once. He didn't know what her life would become, but he felt responsible for helping her take the first step into this new world. When he returned inside later, he found Nayeli standing near the doorway, holding onto the frame for balance. She was taller than the doorway, so she had to bend slightly to pass through it. She looked stronger today, though still tired. Her dark hair fell over her shoulders in waves, and her eyes looked clearer than the night before. She offered him a shy but warm smile. "Good morning," she said slowly, as if testing the words. Caleb smiled back. "Morning. How are you feeling?" She looked down at her hands, then back at him. "Strange," she admitted. "My body feels heavy, but also lighter than yesterday. I think I am waking more fully." Caleb nodded. "That's good. You just need time. Your muscles are adjusting." She looked around the room again, taking in every detail. "Your home. It is simple, but it feels alive. It feels warm." Caleb chuckled softly. "It's been just me here for years, but I'm glad it feels that way." 44. Buddy 40-44. 17 upside. He made her a light breakfast bread, fruit, and warm tea. She ate slowly, watching him move around the kitchen with calm curiosity. Everything he did seemed fascinating to her. She studied the spoons, the cups, the kettle, the shelves, even the wooden table. After so many years in darkness and silence, even small things felt important. After eating, she stood up and looked outside through the window. The desert stretched wide, glowing in the morning sun. "May I go outside?" she asked softly. Caleb nodded. "Of course, just take it slow." She stepped out, blinking at the bright sky. The breeze touched her face, and she breathed deeply, feeling the fresh air fill her lungs. She walked a few steps and touched the fence, running her fingers along the warm wood. Everything felt new to her. As she explored, a curious thing happened. One of the ranch horses approached her. The horse was usually cautious around strangers, but it walked toward Nayeli with unusual calm. She held out her hand gently, letting the horse sniff her fingers. The horse nudged her palm softly, and she smiled with wonder. "It trusts me," she said quietly, almost surprised. Caleb stood nearby, watching. Animals sense things, he said. Maybe they know you're gentle. Nayeli stroked the horse's neck carefully, her touch calm and respectful. In my home, she said softly, horses were friends. We used them for travel. I learned about them as a child. Ender. Her words revealed more pieces of her past. Slowly, bit by bit, she remembered small details: how her people lived, what they believed, and how they taught their children. Caleb listened whenever she shared something, always patient. He never pushed her for answers. She spoke only when she felt ready. Over the next few days, Nayeli's strength began returning. She walked steadier, stood taller, and practiced lifting small items to regain her balance. Caleb showed her how to carry buckets of water from the well. She struggled at first, but her natural strength soon helped her. Caleb watched in surprise when she lifted a heavy wooden gate that he normally struggled with. She set it down gently, not wanting to damage anything. "You're stronger than you look," he said, with a small smile. She smiled back, slightly embarrassed. "My height. It gives me strength. But I was always careful." She began helping him with chores around the ranch. Not because he asked, but because she wanted to feel useful. She carried tools, pulled weeds from the garden, and even brushed down the horses. Caleb was amazed by how fast she learned, and by how quietly she worked, almost as if she didn't want to disturb the land around her. One afternoon, Caleb taught her how to use a hammer to fix fence posts. She held the hammer awkwardly at first, unsure how to position her hands. Caleb moved beside her and gently guided her fingers. "Hold it this way," he said. "Let your wrist stay loose. Don't fight the weight. Use it." Nayeli practiced, tapping lightly at first. Then, more confidently. When she managed her first solid strike, she looked up at him with a proud smile. Caleb laughed softly. "You'll be building barns in no time." She laughed too, the sound soft and warm, like a wind chime. As days turned into weeks, the ranch began feeling different. It was no longer silent. Nayeli's presence brought life, curiosity, and quiet joy. She would hum softly while working, or sit near the horses and speak to them in her old Apache words. Caleb often caught himself watching her, not because she was unusual, but because she carried a calmness he hadn't felt in years. At night, they would sit outside on the porch, watching the stars slowly appear. Nayeli loved the sky. She said it reminded her of nights from her childhood, when she slept under trees with her family during long journeys. She told Caleb stories of old traditions, of songs her elders sang, of rituals meant to protect the sick, of the wisdom passed down from generations. Caleb listened carefully, enchanted by a world so far from his own ranch life. One night, she asked him gently, "Do you think my people still live somewhere?" Caleb hesitated, choosing his words with care. "I believe families move, but memories stay alive, and people survive even when times change." She nodded slowly, accepting the uncertain hope. "Then maybe I am not the last," she whispered. During the day, Nayeli began walking farther from the house. She explored small hills, picked desert flowers, and returned with handfuls of stones that fascinated her. "In my time," she said one afternoon, holding a smooth gray stone. Stones were used for messages. They carried stories. Caleb raised an eyebrow. "Messages?" She smiled. "Yes. Shapes, weights, colors. They spoke for those who could not." As her confidence grew, she asked Caleb more about the world around her. "What do people do now? Do they still follow old ways? Are there dangers near the ranch?" Caleb answered every question patiently. He explained the roads, the towns, the quiet life of ranchers, and the changes that had come through the years. She listened intently, absorbing everything. But not everything was simple. Sometimes, Nayeli would become quiet for long stretches. thinking about the time she had lost. She would sit under a tree and stare at the horizon, wondering if any of her people still lived, or if the sickness had ended or changed everything forever. Caleb never disturbed her during those moments. He knew she needed time to understand her place in a world that felt new yet unfamiliar. One afternoon, a group of riders passed near the ranch, heading toward the trading post. They didn't stop, but their presence made Nayeli tense. She stepped behind the barn, unsure if strangers would react kindly to someone like her. Caleb approached her and placed a gentle hand near her shoulder. Not touching, just close enough to let her know she wasn't alone. "People won't hurt you," he said softly. "But I understand your fear. You're safe here." She nodded weakly. "I'm not afraid for myself," she whispered. "I'm afraid of being taken away again." Caleb didn't fully understand what she meant, but he knew the feeling behind her words. "You won't be taken," he said firmly. "Not while you're here." She looked at him with deep gratitude, her eyes reflecting trust that was slowly building, piece by piece. Over time, Nayeli's presence became a natural part of the ranch. The animals grew used to her. The land seemed to welcome her footsteps. Caleb found himself adjusting things around the house, raising shelves, moving furniture, building a taller stool, widening a doorway frame, all small changes to make her life easier. He didn't mind the work. It felt good to help someone who had been alone for far too long. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Nayeli watched Caleb fixing a broken saddle. "Why are you so patient?" she asked softly. Caleb paused, thinking. "Because patience is all I've ever known," he replied. "And because you need someone patient right now." She smiled gently, her expression touched. "Then I am lucky," she whispered. As night settled over the ranch, Caleb realized something simple but powerful. The girl he found in an abandoned cabin, suspended, forgotten, lost in time, was no longer just a responsibility. She had become a part of the life he never expected to change. Through helping her rediscover the world, Caleb found himself rediscovering something too. A quiet companionship he didn't know he missed. And as Nayeli settled into this new life, unaware of the challenges soon heading toward them, the bond between them grew deeper with each passing day, setting the stage for everything that would come in the final part of their story. The weeks passed gently, and life on the ranch settled into a peaceful rhythm. Nayeli grew stronger each day, her steps steady, her balance sure. Her tall form no longer moved with hesitation, and her eyes, once filled with confusion, now carried quiet confidence. She woke early, helped Caleb with morning chores, learned how to cook simple meals, and explored the land with curiosity that made everything seem new again. The ranch, once silent and lonely, now felt alive. Caleb often found himself listening for her footsteps, her soft humming, or her gentle laughter as she worked with the horses or looked over the fields. But as her strength returned, so did her memories. She often sat under the cottonwood tree behind the house, thinking deeply. Sometimes she would speak about her past, sharing small pieces, her mother's voice, her father's smile, the songs elders sang at sunset, the medicine rituals her grandmother performed, the peaceful nights by the river where her people gathered. Caleb listened quietly, letting her speak at her own pace. Each memory seemed to both comfort her and remind her of everything she had lost. One morning, as the sun rose bright over the desert, Caleb and Nayeli were repairing the outer fence when they heard distant hoofbeats. Caleb straightened immediately, recognizing the sound of riders approaching. Nayeli froze, her tall frame going still like a statue. Her eyes widened with a mix of fear and uncertainty. Caleb placed a calm hand near her elbow, not touching, but close enough to reassure her. "It's all right," he said softly. "We'll see who they are." The hoofbeats grew louder. 3 riders appeared from behind a hill, approaching slowly, not with speed or aggression. They moved with purpose, like people seeking something important. 2 men and 1 woman, all dressed in traditional Apache clothing, their posture steady, their eyes watchful. Caleb felt a strange tension build in the air. Nayeli gripped the fence tightly, her breath quickening. When the riders reached the fence line, they dismounted. The woman stepped forward first. She was older, her dark hair streaked with silver, her presence strong and kind at the same time. Her eyes studied Caleb briefly, then shifted to Nayeli. Something in her expression softened instantly. She lowered her head in respect, placing her hand over her heart. Caleb glanced at Nayeli. Her lips parted in shock, and her eyes filled with emotion. "You," she whispered, her voice trembling. The older woman stepped closer, tears forming in her eyes. "Nayeli, child of the Sun Valley," she said softly. "We thought the spirits had taken you away." Nayeli's breath caught. She covered her mouth with her hands, overwhelmed. Her knees weakened, and Caleb instinctively moved forward to steady her, but she stood firm. The older woman continued, her voice filled with gentle sorrow. "There was sickness. Many were lost. We were forced to leave the valley. The elders who placed you in sleep, they did not survive the long journey. We waited. We searched. But we could not return." Tears rolled down Nayeli's cheeks. She stepped forward slowly, as if afraid the moment might disappear. "I was alone," she whispered. "So many seasons. I woke to emptiness." The older woman reached out, touching Nayeli's arm gently. "You were never forgotten. We prayed for you. We hoped someone strong, someone good, would find you. And they did." Her gaze turned to Caleb, warm and grateful. "Thank you, rancher," she said. "You protected one of ours. You gave her safety when we could not." Caleb felt awkward under the praise and simply nodded. She needed help. Anyone with a heart would have done the same. But the woman smiled knowingly. Not everyone would have shown such kindness. Nayeli stepped closer to the woman, her voice soft. "Are there others, my family?" The woman lowered her eyes. "Some, not all. Your mother's sister lives. Your cousins live. But many who knew you as a child have passed on." Nayeli closed her eyes, feeling both sorrow and relief. She had not lost everything. There were still people who shared her blood, her memories, her language. The younger man stepped forward, studying Nayeli carefully. "Our village moved near the distant river," he explained. "We have a new home now. You may come with us. You will be welcomed as family." Nayeli looked at him, her expression shifting with uncertainty. She turned slowly toward Caleb, who stood quietly beside the fence, his hat in his hands, trying not to show the ache forming inside him. He knew this moment would come. He knew she might return to her people. She had roots, history, a life stolen from her by time and sickness. Now part of it had returned. But Nayeli didn't move. She didn't answer. She looked at Caleb with deep eyes full of silent questions and unspoken fear. The older woman noticed and stepped back. "We will wait," she said gently. "Nein." End quote. "Nein. This choice is yours. You have walked in two worlds now." After they moved their horses to rest in the shade, Caleb and Nayeli sat on the porch together. The sky stretched wide and soft above them, but the moment felt heavy. Caleb spoke first, quietly. "You don't have to decide right now. Take your time." Nayeli looked at her hands. "They are my people," she said. "My blood. My memories." Caleb nodded. "Yes." She turned to him, her eyes searching his face. "But you brought me back to life. You treated me like I mattered. You gave me a place to stand in a world that moved without me." Caleb took a slow breath. "Nayeli, you deserve both your past and your future. I'll understand whatever you choose. Truly." She looked at him for a long moment, her expression full of emotion. "When I woke in that cabin," she said softly, "I saw a stranger, but you were gentle. When I came to your home, I felt safe. When I learned to walk again, you walked beside me. When I remembered my past, you listened. You gave me kindness without expecting anything." Caleb looked away, feeling warmth and sadness mix inside him. "I only did what I'd hoped someone else would do if they found a lost soul." Nayeli smiled slightly. "But they didn't find me. You did." Her words hung in the air, simple but powerful. She stood up slowly, stepping into the sunlight. She walked toward the cottonwood tree where she often sat to think. Caleb remained on the porch, watching her silhouette against the gold evening light. For a long time, she stayed under the tree, silent and still. She looked at the horizon, at the open land that had become familiar. She thought about the nights she spent at the ranch, the mornings she woke to calm sunlight, the laughter she shared with Caleb over small things, the peaceful rhythm she found in a place she never expected to be. She touched the bark of the tree, feeling the life within it. Then she looked back at the ranch house, small, quiet, warm, and at the man who stood waiting. Not pressuring her, not fearing her decision, simply hoping she would choose what made her heart feel whole. When she finally walked back, Caleb stood. Nayeli stopped in front of him, her tall form casting a soft shadow over the porch. Her voice was gentle but sure. "I want to stay." Caleb blinked. "Are you certain?" She nodded. "Yes. My people are alive, and that fills my heart with joy. But my place, my life now, it is here. I feel peace here. I feel purpose. And I do not want to leave what I found." Caleb's chest tightened, but with warmth instead of sadness. "They will understand?" he asked. Nayeli smiled. "They already do." When she spoke with the elders, they accepted her choice with calm wisdom. "Your path has changed," the older woman said. "The spirits guided you here. And they guided him to you. Walk the new path with honor." Nayeli bowed her head respectfully. The three visitors stayed for the night, sharing quiet stories and memories with Nayeli. Caleb offered them food, horses to rest, and warm shelter. Before leaving the next morning, the older woman placed her hand on Caleb's arm gently. "Care for her not because she needs you," she said, "but because she chooses to walk beside you." Caleb nodded respectfully. After the riders left, the ranch felt calm again, but not lonely. Nayeli stood beside Caleb, watching the riders disappear into the distance. She took a deep breath and smiled softly. "This is my home now," she whispered. Caleb returned her smile. "Then we'll build your future here." Life continued on the ranch, but now it was shared. Nayeli helped Caleb with everything: mending fences, watching over cattle, tending to the garden. She learned new things, taught Caleb about her traditions, and brought a gentle strength to the land. Together they built new things: an extra room to fit her height, stronger beams in the house, a taller doorway, sturdy tables, and places where she could work comfortably. Evenings became moments of peace. They sat together on the porch, watching the stars. Nayeli told stories passed down by her people, and Caleb shared memories of his childhood. Their lives began weaving together like threads in a blanket, creating something warm and lasting. And often, when Caleb thought about that old cabin bought for 12 cents, he realized it had brought him the most unexpected gift of his life. Not wealth, not land, but a companion who brought light back into the quiet spaces of his world. Nayeli, once suspended and forgotten, now walked freely under the open sky, her place no longer uncertain. And Caleb, once alone on his ranch, now shared his days with someone who turned silence into comfort and brought meaning to every sunrise. Their story didn't end with a goodbye. It began with a choice to stay, to rebuild, to live, and to walk forward together across the endless Arizona land.